Good morning everyone. Today we're going to be leaving Carnarvon and going to Conway, and the wind's going to be following us. The wind at the moment is on our nose, but we're going to turn round and it's going to be up our chuff. We should be getting light airs, flat seas and drizzle all the way back. And that's why I've left the cover up on the cockpit. It's nearly 20 past 8 at the moment and we're just setting off. The lock gate has just opened and Johan's just turned lights green so we can depart. Now we're extremely early, in fact too early for our tide gate, which is the Swellies, but we're not too bothered about that because being early gives you some advantages. The first advantage it's going to give us is the tide flow is going to be fast outside and it's going our way, so we won't have to use the engine. We'll just drift down with the tide. All we'll actually need from the wind is some steerage, enough to push us through the water a half a knot so the boat will actually go in the direction we want to. The current should actually carry us down to the Swellies quite quickly, probably near an hour beforehand, but that allows us to go through with a bit of positive flood with us, and that'll carry us through quite quickly and out the other side and carry us hopefully all the way to Beaumaris before we start getting any adverse tide. That's the flood coming in from the opposite direction after it's gone round Anglesey. The rain appears to have just stopped for a minute, and as you can see by the camera lens, it's still on there. As I depart, Johan's always waiting to say goodbye to anyone and hello to anyone who comes in and out of his dock. And there he is up the top giving me a wave. So I'll say goodbye for now until next time. Now the tide is flooding now, which means it's going from left to right in front of us, that way. Which is the same way we're going and the wind's going. And if all three of you are going the right way, that should keep the sea nice and flat as well. Well, this is today's tidal time for going through the Swellies. As you can see here, Liverpool high water is at 12:20. Well, 2 hours before is slack water, which is just here, and is 10:20. So we've got 2 hours to get down there, and we don't need them, so we'll get through a little bit handy. Well, no sooner as we get out into the Straits and we get the Genoa out. The Jenny on its own will be sufficient going down the Straits running, as we're only looking for steerage. And I've actually set the sail under my cockpit cover. I can't see what it looks like, so I have to poke my head out. I don't suppose it looks too bad. Anything will drag you downwind and give you a little bit of steerage. Right, it's time to get shut of the motor, I think. It can absolutely be your friend, can this current, as long as it's going with you. It can absolutely be your enemy as well, like you see when we were coming down. But as long as you got enough time plumbed in, current doesn't really matter. You have no choice but to actually deal with it, and you have to make it fit into your plans. It's as simple as that. Right, let's see what we've got now that we're switching the engine off as statistics for our figures. Well, here we are, just leaving Carnarvon. There we go, and we're making 4.8 knots over the ground, which is credible, in 3 knots of wind up the chuff, and the speed through the water's 0.2, 0.3 of a knot, but that's all we need for steerage to get away from blurry Carnarvon. I'm sorry about the blurry conditions, and one of these days I'm going to put my hand in my pocket and buy a decent camera. As you can see, the sails are hardly filled, plenty of ruffles and wiggles in them, but they're dragging us along with our little bit of steerage, and that's all we need. The speed through the water a little bit further down has become too slow to register. We've hardly got any wind, 4 knots if that up the backside. But we got 5.4 over the ground, so we've picked up speed. It's amazing. Well, I do really like the comforts of my wheelhouse. Sitting inside here while it's miserable out there. That's a definite plus. Another plus is having this current on our side. Flying down the river with it. I think that boy must be doing near 5 knots on his own and he's just sitting on the spot. Well, that's the right sort of wind. Over 2.5 knots out of 5 knots. That's not too bad. And look at that, 6.6 knots, screaming now down the Menai Straits. Except when you go outside, you can actually see it's not Swallow screaming down the Menai Straits. She's just about manoeuvring herself through the water, and that's what we planned on, just about getting the steerage. And as you can see, the bow's just cutting water, but that's all she needs to. As long as the hull is actually moving through the water, we will be getting a decent steerage. Over 7 knots now and flying, and not a lot of it down to our sailing abilities, unfortunately, but we are getting 3.8 now through the water, so it's additional. Our little bit of wind is helping us. We've got a full Genoa at the moment, but I'm quite sure that won't last once we've passed Fellinelly. And this, my friends, is Fellinelly, or Port Dinorwic, whichever you prefer to call it. But normally when you get round the corner underneath my boom down there, the wind actually dies a little bit and you'll slow up a little bit. This is an outstanding place on the Menai Straits to keep your boat. It's fairly well sheltered here from most weathers, except wind over tide can bounce you around a little bit. And you've got good marine facilities all around you. And I think I need to pay a bit more attention to that sail, the shape of that. Look at that for beautiful, isn't it? Well, we soon slip past Fellinelly, which means we're on the last stretch now before the actual bridges and the Swellies pops in. We're making a nice cutting line through the water, so we've got plenty of way on, and we've got good positive steerage and a full sail. But all this speed doesn't belong to Swallow alone. Just take a look at this buoy under the surface of the water, because there's that much current. Yeah, underneath the water, because it's being dragged down. There sure is plenty of beautiful buildings as you pass down the Menai Straits, but at this speed it goes rather too quick, and all of a sudden you're at the bridge. And as you can see, we're not alone. We've got company for our early dart through. Obviously somebody thinks exactly the same as me. Well, as you can see, no rocks up, loads of water, and I mean loads of water, so way hey, let's go. Well, there's an odd bit of rock there, but you can see the flood hitting the rock and how much it drops. You can actually see it hitting, and it looks like it lowers itself as it falls past the rock, and that's the reason that it moves so quickly, because it's fallen. A little bit of a grunty rock in the middle there, but apart from that you'll see nothing else. Up to the pyramid on the shore, and then pick up your transit lines behind you and you're away. I always sort of feel it's a little bit tempting to follow another boat if there's another boat in front of you going through here, but it definitely isn't recommended. Where Cribbin Rock dips down in the water, she leaves a wake behind her like a riptide on the surface there. That's the end of the rock, and it's the dancing water at the end of the rock, and it's only because it's coming round each side, hitting each other and coming upwards. Well, you fly through here quite quickly. Your speed over the ground's up quite high. It gets into double figures quite quickly and stays there. So you've got to be sort of awake to where the boat direction is travelling all the time, because the current might be taking you where you want to go, and you have to correct that yourselves. Sometimes you find yourself pointing at the land, going sideways. But as long as you know the path you want to take, ferry gliding's easy, whether it's in a river or in the middle of the Swellies. And then all of a sudden, the murky Swellies on a bad rainy day is being left behind. Putting the platters to starboard, but there's plenty of water on top of them now anyway. And then just get yourself under Menai Bridge. As I'm looking back at this bit of footage, I'm noticing it's very grainy looking, and it's not really that the camera was letting itself down in any way, shape or form. It's focusing where it should be focusing. It's just that it was a drizzly day. You know that when they turn around and say it's the fine rain, the type that soaks you, you hardly know it's fallen. Well, it's that, and it puts a blurriness to the visibility, I think. Or at least that's my excuse, and I'm going to stick to it. Well, as soon as we exit the bridge, we've got 6 knots of wind. We've got 5 knots over the ground. So we're making our way along quite happy. 3 knots over through the water, and that's all good. The sail's back up, it's raining out, the engine's off, the world's nice and peaceful, and we're going in the direction we want to go. As we head on up to Bangor Pier there in the distance. This is loads harder than using the tiller to steer the boat by. This is my first go. The sail's backing now. Oh my god, Lisa did it the other day and she made it look easier than I did. Doing 4.5 knots through the water. 5.6 over the ground because we've got a little bit of tide with us, and the wind keeps shifting direction from port to starboard on our stern, and the sail keeps flogging. Now I know it should be goose wing, but we've only got the Dinorwic out, and this is my first go ever with the steering wheel having this there. Lisa had to go a couple of days ago, and that was worth a laugh, and now it's worth a laugh with me. It takes a little bit of time to get used to. But it's raining out, so it's nice to be inside. I've given up. I'm a chicken. I'm going to let the professional do it. She's dead happy doing it. I just think it's a bit of a palaver. A tiller's dead easy and such of more natural and less effort. As we get towards Gallows Point, our flood which was carrying us is meeting the flood which is coming round the other way and starting to slow up, which means that we're actually going to start speeding up, going through the water a bit more to continue making some speed over the ground. But the boat obviously starts feeling a lot faster now than she has been doing, where she's been quite sedate. So she's starting to enjoy her sail a lot more, and so are we. The peace and tranquility we had before looks like it's gone now. The powerboats seem to be out, the jet skis seem to be out, the wind seems to be out. Everything's going on, it's all cracking off. As we round Gallows Point, we're starting to hit the adverse flood that's coming in against us, which means that it'll want us to be going backwards unless we can push our way through it. Well, light airs or not, we don't seem to have had any trouble making our way so far. And this chap doesn't seem to be struggling in any way whatsoever either. He hasn't even got his sails up. And if you notice, he gives me a little salute about here. Whee! And I gave him a wave back. Here comes a westerly 33 and it looks like it's absolutely flying. But that's because it's got the tide behind it. Whoosh, and it screams past. Well, we're making 3.2 knots over the ground, and we're making 4 over through the water, so we're losing a knot against tide, and we're only got 7 knots of wind. Well, that is apparent wind, what the boat can feel 7 knots. So if we're actually making 4 knots through the water, but losing a knot and only making 3 knots over the ground, that'll equal 10 knots of wind. So we've got a clean 10 knots of wind behind us, and it's obviously given us a fair pace. So I think my hull is definitely slippier than it ever has been before. But I still don't know if I've got any chance of ever keeping up with my brother. We'll have to find out soon when we get out for a sail. Well, we just turned 90 degrees to starboard to go over the banks. It's picked up the speed a bit because now we're on a broad reach, so we're doing over 5 knots through the water and 5 knots over the ground, and the boat's really enjoying it. The wind's picked up to about 15 knots at the moment, and we've only got the foresail still up. Yeah, she's absolutely loving this. The hull definitely feels slippier to me now anyway. I mean, one sail, 15 knots of wind, broad reach, and we've got over 5 knots, and you know how I've struggled in the past to achieve that. So something's getting better. I think it's time to have a peek at that gauge and see whether we're getting past 5 yet. Speed 5.48. Still doing 5 over the ground, but we've picked up a little bit through the water, and the wind's staying around 15-16 knots on the reach. It's still a slight out anyway, which keeps the water quite flat so that we can make a good pace through it. But I can't help thinking, what would I be doing if I had my main up as well at this particular moment in time? Lisa would say you'd be healing, and I wouldn't be as comfortable as I am at the moment with the boat standing upright. And she would probably be correct. So I think these are very good conditions to put the kettle on. Well, this doesn't last forever anyway. Pretty soon we're going to be starting to turn to port. And here we are, turning to port. And as we turn to port, the wind gets more behind us, drops down in strength, and takes away a bit of our creamy speed. But the boat's still doing 4.5 knots in the direction we want, and it's still comfortable. I'm glad I made the decision to keep the tent up in the back anyway. It's kept the cockpit, which by the cockpit I mean me, nice and dry every time I've gone out to do whatever it is I've gone to do. And of course, it keeps the water, because it's a following wind. It keeps the rain that does come towards the cockpit away from going into the cabin, and allowing us to keep the doors open as well. When you're running in a following sea, the bow's got a funny little tune it plays with itself. It cuts its way through the water as it's running down the wave, but then when the wave catches up with it, it seems to overtake the bow and get in front of the wave like that, and it makes a little bit of a ruckus. Well, it's great to watch. It's just another one of them things that I can be mesmerised by on the boat. Mind you, this isn't much of a following sea, and the waves aren't much to run down, because they're at best probably about 2 foot high. But it makes the sort of sensation that I'm talking about. It just gets bigger as the waves get bigger. But you'd need more wind for that, and I don't think we're going to get any more wind. But we're way on time anyway. We'll get back from Carnarvon in one tide into our marina, and our marina likes to close early, but we're making a good enough pace not to worry about what time it wants to close. Here she goes again. Get ready. The wave's just catching us up, so if it catches us up, it does this and runs in front of the boat. Look, whee! See, a bow wave ends up running in front of your boat, and then you pass straight through your own bow wave. Quite a funny little sensation. Swallow does seem to enjoy running more than most boats though, and I don't know what causes that. Let's see what we're doing here. 5.3 knots, through the water that is, and over the ground. 16 knots of wind up the chuff. We're doing well. Well, it doesn't matter what it feels like outside. When I come back inside, it's like another world. It's like you're watching it again on the screen. Nice cup of tea and watch the world go by. I think I'll take this one on the patio. Oh, I'm in the cockpit. And I can sit here and watch the world go by. Hey, the rain's going off and visibility's starting to get a bit better. There might be hope for today, yeah? Although it won't be long now, and we'll have ran all the way home. I do love Swallow. She does put in a hell of a good performance. She's not bothered about much, is she? Just gets you where you want to go. Nothing's a fuss or a song and dance. And here we are, once again passing the pen out full marker on the inside. Coming this way, you don't have to go round the fairway, you just slip into the bottom of the buoyage system at Conway. Penaclip tunnel there, cutting through the bottom of Conway Mountain. Can everybody remember when they used to beep when they went through it years ago? Nobody beeps anymore. Well, the air's starting to lighten up now, so I wonder whether we'll actually make it back or not. We're virtually there anyway, so it would be no hardship to put the motor on at this point, but it's nice if you can make the rest of the journey. The tide will turn at some point, I'm sure. That's Bob over there. He's got the other boat's comrades. We're at the dogleg now in the buoyage system going into Conway. Wind's down to less than 9 knots up the chuff, so it's half of what it was, but we've still got 3.5 through the water, which isn't bad. And we're still making 4-1 over the ground, so there's a little bit of favourable with us at the moment. It is staying constant at just under 10 knots though. But how long can this possibly last for? I don't know. Well, not far to the perch now, and it's feeling a little bit lighter. As we round the perch, we almost come to a stop. Start going a little bit sideways. So I do decide to help what little sail power we've got left by putting the donkey on. And we're making our way down the river, and don't forget the river's ebbing. So we've got good steerage, but we're also making something over the ground which we mightn't be making with the wind on its own. There seems to be quite a bit of traffic in the river as well, and that's another good reason to keep your steerage 100%. And if you ever visit Conway, this is the sightseeing boat. You pick her up in front of the Liverpool Arms on Conway Quay itself, and it takes you for a trip round the river. Well, we're coming up to the gangway now on our port side, and the marina follows quite shortly, so we'll be shooting in and picking up our berth. As usual, I'd like to thank you all for watching, staying with us through this little trip back on this dull, murky day. And thanks to those of you who've subscribed, and to those of you who haven't, get subscribed. It doesn't cost you anything. It's almost summer. Can you believe this weather, eh? I couldn't get any more layers on. I didn't notice straight away, but as we got back, someone must have been in the berth, because this fender on the end here is hanging off. It's only got one bolt left in it. I only noticed once I'd gone ashore. I hadn't noticed at this point, but when I reported it, he said nobody'd been here. So there's a mystery then. Looks like I've left Lisa a bit of a wide gap to step across there. I'll have to shove the boat to port a little bit. And as you all know the method, helm hard over to port, forward, neutral, reverse, forward, neutral, reverse, forward, neutral, reverse, forward, neutral, reverse, and over she comes. Lisa knows well enough not to try and jump for the pontoon. She'll wait for me to bring the boat in, or take it back out and bring her in again. So as I jump off here, I see the offended fender on the corner. Tell Lisa about it. We've got an offended fender on the corner. Looks like somebody hit that quite hard. All the wood's gone. While we were in Carnarvon, we had a couple of these in the Royal Welsh. They're always very welcoming there. Well, that's it till next time. From me, Lisa and Swallow. And doesn't she look grand there? Lovely lines. Right, bon voyage everyone. See you soon.